commentary in our series, and today I want to do something a little bit different from what we've done in the last four of these presentations here. Up to this point, we've essentially restricted ourselves to politics in what we're talking about. Most of what I've talked about up to now has been pretty strictly about political ideology and conservatism versus liberalism, Republicans versus Democrats, and specific public policy and that kind of thing. I want to go a little different route today. I want to do something that's more of a social commentary. Not that what we'll talk about today doesn't have anything to do with politics. It certainly does. And in that respect, really, it was a political event that actually made me start thinking about this. But the actual topic we're going to talk about really has legs far beyond just politics, and really has an impact in our society far beyond just a political race here or there, or what party certain people align themselves with. The political aspect of this is really more of the symptom than it is the disease in what we're going to talk about. So just kind of have that understanding going forward here that today we're talking about something that's in a lot of ways bigger than politics, if you will. And also I know that some of my previous presentations, most of them have gone well over the 15-minute time limit that YouTube gives you, so they've had to be broken up into two parts. This is such an interesting topic today that I don't even know if I'll be able to contain it within two parts. This might go 3 or even 4. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm going to try and get through it as quick as I can, but I am also going to make sure that I take whatever time we need to thoroughly discuss this. That's the luxury of funding and producing all of this yourself. You can take whatever time you feel you need to effectively discuss something, and you don't have to worry about getting your commercial commitments in, or some arbitrary article length that an editor gives you that you can't go over X number of words. We're not going to do that. We're going to discuss what we need to discuss here and take whatever time we need to do it. I think that you're intelligent enough that you can hang with us on this. So that's the idea here. What is today's topic? Today's topic is very simply, what is wrong with the youth of America? Now, I know most of you are hearing that title and probably seeing it right up there above my head on the YouTube page, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, this is another grumpy old man who's sitting on his front porch and saying, "You kids get out of my yard." Well, not really. I know there's always some level of consternation with the younger generations of any time period, with those that came before them saying, they're a little bit off. But I think that what we're seeing out of this generation, and to define that, I'm talking about people who are in their late teens, early adulthood, in their 20s. So 18 to 30, just to give you kind of a number to work with here. A lot of the things we're seeing out of this group are uniquely worrying and uniquely troubling, and are a little bit different than just the general rebelliousness that we've seen out of generations past. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And I understand. Most of us, when we talk about younger generations and criticize them and say whatever we say, we have a tendency to think about youth through our own eyes, through the interpretation of what things were like when we were that age. I'm in my mid-30s, so I'm naturally going to think of the youth of America in terms of what 20-somethings were like back in the 1990s, back when I was in that era. If you're a little bit older, you might think of what they were like in the 80s or 70s. So, inherently there's going to be a comparison with that, and as such, I think a lot of us, as we get older, lose some connection to the attitudes and the actions of younger generations. We don't always realize how radically different they are sometimes, particularly this generation of youth, than we were. So as we hear things and as we see things, it's often hard for us to understand them or to even believe them, because it just doesn't make any sense from our perspective. And I think that was really a struggle I had when coming up with this topic and answering these questions and analyzing this group of people. So many of the things I see out of them make no logical sense at all for someone of my age, or I would argue of your age, or if you're older, certainly it's going to be an absolute 180 to what you would expect people of that age to think and do and feel. So I acknowledge that difficulty in discussion right out of the gate. So in terms of my analyzation and my commentary on the youth of America, where am I starting from? What made me think of this topic? What made me curious about this? Well, essentially what made me curious about it was the 2008 presidential election. Now I know we've talked about that election a lot on these commentaries, and we've talked until we're blue in the face about how devastating it was for America to elect a socialist like Barack Obama, and how horrible that is for our country and how we can recover from it. But in a different sense, the 2008 election, if you take all the politics out of it and set all the politics aside, it was fascinating on a number of other levels as well. The 2008 election, if you're thinking of it purely from a political science perspective, was very unique and very interesting, and illustrated a lot of interesting things about what can be done to win an election. Essentially, any expert who is worth their salt in terms of the political process would tell you that in 2008, the youth vote, 18 to 30, the 20-somethings, that vote was critical to Barack Obama winning. Okay, well, that in and of itself is not necessarily a surprise. Younger people tend to trend more towards the Democrats. That's a pretty staid factor in most elections, but this was a little different because not only did he get a higher percentage of the youth vote, which you would expect out of a Democrat, but he also managed, and his campaign also managed, to really fire up this group of people and really get them out to the polls and really get a large amount of turnout from this group of people. It's not enough in elections, it's not enough to just win a percentage of a group. If you're going to win a percentage of a group, you want to get as much turnout from that group as you can to influence the overall results. And the Democrats identified the youth of America as a potential opportunity for them in that regard, and were able to execute that. There is a tremendous book out there by a gentleman named Jason Matera, and it discusses this topic in detail. It's a book called Obama Zombies. And I would highly recommend you pick this up and put it on your bookshelf and give it a good read. Obama Zombies by Jason Matera. Matera in this book really goes through the nuts and bolts of what the Democratic Party did to get their message out to the youth, to fire them up, to get them mobilized, and to really get them to take stock in Barack Obama, to really identify with him, to make Obama really seem like their candidate. And, you know, I hate to give the devil their due. I hate to give the Democrats credit. But purely in terms of an electoral strategy, you have to admit, it worked. The Democratic Party used, as Matera illustrates in his book, they used every form of communication and media that this younger generation is comfortable with. Your Facebooks, your Twitters, your emails, your internets, all of those things. They used all of those to great effect and got their message out there. The Republicans, John McCain included, lagged far behind in this area. They did not get their message out there in those formats that this current generation of youth are comfortable with and that they deal with every day. I would go so far as to say the Republican Party still does not do an effective job of that. I know they're trying to make inroads, but you better make some inroads pretty quick. Because let's face it, when it comes to social media and that kind of thing, I'll admit it, the Democrats have it all over us. No question about it. That's an advantage they have, and we've got to fight harder to establish our own foothold there. But that's another topic for another time. Point being that the Democratic Party identified this generation of youth as a key strategy to winning the election. They came up with a game plan for them. They executed that game plan, and they got them to the polls, and they got them elected. I think even those of us who are the biggest criticizers of Obama would have to admit that the Democrats were successful in that respect. So, acknowledging that, and having read through Mr. Matera's book, and have seen all of the myriad of ways that the Democratic Party effectively got their message out to the youth and got them mobilized, it does bring up a couple of extra questions in my mind. Now, let me backtrack a little bit. Let me set this up by saying that, you know, I know a number of you out there are vociferous readers, and that's a positive thing. I would encourage that. Read everything you can get your hands on, especially if you're young. But a lot of you, I'm sure, know that when you read a good book, particularly a nonfiction book, when you read a good book, it doesn't just answer questions for you, but if it's a good author and they do their job well, they'll trigger some thought in your own mind, and you'll then start asking questions that go even beyond what the author talked about. You know, the author's going to put forth his research and opinion and thesis and whatever else, and hopefully support it, and a good author will be able to do that well, but a great author will then take that, and then it will result in you, the reader, thinking even further and asking some more questions. And I find that that's exactly what happened with Jason Matera's book, the Obama Zombies book. Matera did a great job, as I said earlier, of illustrating exactly what the Democratic Party did to capture the youth vote. But the question that he really did not touch on, or did not spend any large amount of time on, but that interests me is that, okay, we know the Democrats use the different social media and the communication platforms to get their message out, but why was the Democrats' message so appealing to this group of people? Stop and think about that. You know, a lot of times people make the assumption that if you just market something cleverly enough, it doesn't matter what you market. If you just market it cleverly enough, you can sell it to anybody. I don't know that I believe that on a large scale. I mean, you can sink bazillions of dollars into an ad campaign, and it's no guarantee that it'll work. You know, I go back to when I was a kid, and they introduced New Coke, New Coca-Cola, and they put ads everywhere on this, and billboards, and Super Bowl ads, and I mean, you name it, they put it out there, and they hyped this thing to the moon. And New Coke came out, and we tasted it, and we're like, this tastes like crap! And New Coke died. Very quickly and very humiliatingly. So it just goes to show you that a marketing campaign in and of itself isn't enough. The message that you're putting out there has to resonate, and the interesting thing to me is that this message from the Obama campaign and the Democrats in 2008 not only was put out there for the youth, but it resonated. And that to me is the troubling and fascinating thing about all of it.